Hello everyone, welcome to Legacy Ace Academy. Indian rupee has been depreciating from the past few months. So this reached a all-time low at 81.54, and as of now the Indian rupee is trading at 81.56 rupees against the dollar. This is set to be the all-time low for Indian rupee. So in this video we will see what led to the fall of Indian rupee. The second thing that we'll be seeing is a very interesting part, that what made the US dollar the world's most stabilized currency and the world currency. What made dollar the world currency, and what were the policies that USA adopted in making dollar the monopoly in international trade. And the third one we'll be looking at is, can India regain the strength of rupee? Now we are seeing that rupee at 81.56 rupees per dollar. Can India make this at 70 rupees per dollar? Somewhere in the near future. Okay, these are the three parts to this video. For the complete information, stay tuned till the end. Let's start. So you can see here 81.56, the Indian rupee is trading at 81.56 rupees against the dollar, and this is the all-time low for Indian rupee in the history of Indian economy. So let's discuss what led to the downfall of Indian rupee. See, everything started from post-pandemic economic growth spurt. Okay, we have seen what is this growth post-pandemic economic growth spurt. Post-pandemic, what happened? The growth both in US and also India and most of the world developing and the developed economies intensified, because of which this led to inflation. Okay, you have studied in your economics that whenever there is inflation, the currency loses its purchasing parity or purchasing power. This is what happened with respect to dollar and also rupee. The inflation in India was higher when compared to the inflation in US, because of which the Indian rupee started losing its purchasing power. This was led by the US Federal Reserve. US Federal Reserve, in order to contain inflation, adopted to increase the interest rates, and because of which the demand for the dollar increased. See, in the foreign exchange market, everything is decided by the demand and supply. There was a demand and supply mismatch because of US Federal Reserve increasing the interest rate, and because of this increasing in demand, the dollar appreciated and the rupee value started depreciating. We have also seen, as a result of this US Federal Reserve increasing the interest rate, we have seen an event in the Indian economy that is called as Black Swan event, which led to the sudden wipeout of the FPI foreign portfolio investment from the Indian equity market. So this led to an event called as Black Swan event. So all these four events combined, all these four instances combined, along with the uncertainty in the international market caused by the Russian invasion on Ukraine, intensified the strengthening or demand for the dollar. At the same time, rupee started depreciating. Okay, now let's discuss a bit about the history of dollar becoming the world's currency. How dollar became the world's currency? What happened in the history that led dollar to become the world's currency? See, till 1945, one thing that you should be sure of is that till 1945, it was UK which was dominating the world administration, world economy, and the world affairs, and it was not USA. 1945, after the devastating effects of the Second World War, the dominance that UK had through the colonies. it was said that UK was the country which had the empire where the sun wouldn't set, because the empire of the UK stretched throughout the globe. So in this scenario, in this situation, the economic situations post the Second World War was so bad for UK that UK could not hold on to its colonies. And this movement was taken as an advantage by USA, and USA grew from 1945, and now presently 2022 USA is capable of toppling the economy of any country. Okay, for example, we can take the example recently of Turkey, of Iran, North Korea, and also Russia. When Russia invaded Ukraine, USA took away Russia from the SWIFT transactions, because of which Russian economy had a big blow. So USA has grown to such an extent from 1945 that USA has the capacity to cater or to topple any world government and also the economy. Everything started by 1940, when the British Empire post Second World War, that is 1945, when the British Empire started declining. See, USA was a very intelligent country in both World War One and the World War Two. If we'll just look at the history, we will get to know that World War One, which started in the year 1914, and World War Two, which started in the year 1939, USA did not join the war from the initial stages. In the First World War, USA entered the war only after the German ship sunk the USA ship. Okay, German Navy sunk the USA ship, only then US entered the war. And in the year 1939, when the Second World War started, in the year 1942, when the Japanese Air Force bombed the Pearl Harbor, it's only then that the USA entered the war. And post First World War, USA followed a policy called as policy of isolation, where USA did not take part in any reconstruction activity happening in Europe or any of the foreign affairs interactions or negotiations that were happening in Europe. Because of which USA followed a policy called as policy of isolation. Because of this, though USA was a part of the First and the Second World War, USA took advantage of this rather than getting negative effects. USA acted like a merchant, like a world merchant, where USA started supplying cotton, USA started supplying the iron, USA started supplying coal. So USA was seen as a source of raw materials for Europe, for the reconstruction post the First and the Second World War. So this made, when all the other countries which took part in the First and the Second World War, when their economies were reducing because of such a huge trade that was happening with US throughout the globe, the US economy was increasing. Back then, in the 1945s and 1950s, the only medium of exchange or something that was stable was gold. So because of such a huge trade that was happening between USA and Europe, the gold reserves of USA started increasing. And by 1945 or 1946, according to some credible sources, 76 to 78% of the gold reserves was with USA. So this made USA the more powerful country in the world. And in the year 1945, USA took advantage of this, and USA came out with a proposal and established Bretton and Woods institutions. And as a result of the establishment of the Bretton and Woods institution, 44 countries, including the global powers like France, Britain, Germany, Spain, all these 44 countries agreed upon pegging their own currency against the dollar. And the USA said that if you give me dollars, I will return the exact amount of gold, because USA was having a lot of gold. This was the first move. See, in making US dollar the global currency, we will be discussing about the three important phases. This is the first phase, where US said all these 44 countries who have signed the Bretton and Woods agreement, if these countries give US the dollar, and the USA would be returning gold in return. So what does this mean? For example, let's imagine a particular country, that is India and Pakistan. Let's assume India and Pakistan are involved in a particular trade, okay, import and export. And here India demands dollar from Pakistan. And what will India do with the dollar? India started selling dollar to USA. In return, India was getting gold. This was the mechanism that the US started post Bretton and Woods institution. Because of this, all the international trade started happening with the dollar as the reserve currency, dollar as the base, because dollar was something that people could trust. If there is a trade happening between India and Pakistan, Pakistan can devalue its currency anytime and there won't be any trust between the nations. So in this case, when the dollar replaced the domestic currency for the international exchange, people started trusting the dollar, and because of which the importance of the dollar increased. You can see here, 1 ounce of gold, if any country gives back $35 and that country would get 1 ounce of gold. This is what the US dollar was pegged at. All the 44 currencies were pegged to dollar. At the same time, dollar was pegged to gold. Okay, this was the first phase of current US dollar becoming the world's leading currency. And this led to the establishment of Bretton and Woods institutions, and as a part of Bretton and Woods institution, we have World Bank and the International Monetary Fund getting established. The second phase was a big blow for the oil market. By 1940s and 1950s, and the 1950s, it was USA and Europe which had the technology in order to mine and also carry out research with respect to crude oil. Though the Middle East was sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, Middle East did not have the technology either to assess or to extract the crude reserve. At this time, USA sent out missions to Saudi in order to carry out the excavation, in order to carry out the extraction process of the crude oil. This was the same time, 1945, the Second World War. Italy bombed the Saudi's oil facility, and Saudi requested US for the support. In return, when USA started supplying the military aid and also dollar to Saudi Arabia, in return, USA asked for a provision where Saudi would sell all its oil in dollars. We all know Saudi Arabia is the world's leading producer of crude oil. When there was an agreement between USA and Saudi Arabia, so that USA would provide Saudi Arabia with all the required military equipment and also money. In return, Saudi Arabia would trade every liter of oil with dollars, okay, and not any other currency. And this agreement, which happened between USA and Saudi Arabia, this made all the other countries in the world, okay. Now all the other countries in the world, if they had to trade for oil with Saudi Arabia, they required dollars. So all the countries started accumulating dollars, and this is how dollar became the reserve currency. And the third phase also started by 1970, when USA is exchanging its dollar with gold. Okay, so by 1970, as this was the phase of the Cold War in the world politics, by 1970, what happened? The gold reserves that USA had started depleting. At this time, the president of USA, Richard Nixon, came up with the notification and said, the USA is giving up its policy of exchanging the gold with dollar. So from now on, if any country gives dollars, we will not be exchanging it with gold. So the dollar which was pegged at gold, okay, so this mechanism was overthrown. And most of the countries started piling up the dollars, because it was only the dollar that could give them the crude. And crude was the source for energy, and crude was the source for the global economy. So all the other countries started stockpiling dollar. At the same time, the US came up with a mechanism for the international transactions called as SWIFT, which is called as Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, which deals with the international trade. So this is how the SWIFT communication work. Let's imagine there's an Indian trader, okay, he's trading with a Sri Lankan trader. The Indian trader will have a bank in the Indian, that is, let's assume this is an SBI bank, okay, this is a Bank of Sri Lanka. So the Indian trader will have an account in the SBI bank, and the SBI bank will have an account in the American bank. Okay, SBI will have an account in the American bank. At the same time, the Sri Lankan trader will have an account in the Sri Lankan bank, and all the Sri Lankan banks will have an account in the American bank. If at all there is any transaction happening between the Indian trader and the Sri Lankan trader, okay, if the Indian trader pays money to the Indian bank, then Indian bank will send a message to its account in the American bank to transfer a certain amount to the Sri Lankan bank account that is there in the American bank. Okay, here the transaction happens through dollar. For any international trade, any exchange to happen, this SWIFT network was the base. So this is how the SWIFT network started gaining popularity, because it became hassle-free for any country to trade as a part of SWIFT network, because it was easy to trade. And all the foreign exchanges, all the foreign trade could happen through dollar. And because of this, all the countries started stockpiling dollar, and by 2022, the US dollar is the world's most stable currency and also the most sought currency. Let's assume here in the American bank, the dollar that is present, okay, which is unutilized dollar that is present in the American bank, this dollar was invested in the US bond market. Because of this huge investment that the US got, this happened from 1970s. Because of this huge investment that the US got, and the US economy started getting capital for its development. And this is how This is how the US could grow, and today you can see the investment in the US bond market ranges to $7 trillion. Okay, $7 trillion is the actual amount of money that has been invested in the US bond market. See, this $7 trillion is actually greater than the combined GDP of India, France, and Russia. Okay, Indian GDP, if we can talk about the monetary terms, around 2.2, $2.4 trillion, and this is $7 trillion investment is what is there in the US bond market, and this money is actually greater than the world's leading economies put together, that is India, France, and Russia. This is the amount of money that has been invested in the US bond market, because of which US could easily get the capital for its development. Okay, excess money is invested in the US bonds. Can India recover? Okay, now we have discussed how the US dollar became the monopoly for the international trade, and now let's discuss, can India recover this push? See, one thing that India is doing as of now is carrying out the bilateral agreements between the neighboring countries and also some of the leading trade partners, so that the bilateral trade happens in the local currency and not in the dollar, so that we can reduce our dependence on the dollar. So India has already conducted such an agreement with the ASEAN countries. India has such agreement with Bangladesh. India is working on such agreement with Russia. Because of this, our dependence on the dollar would reduce. Okay, this is the first thing that we will have to do in order to recover. Okay, one good sign about the Indian economy is that, see, Indian economy is growing very well, and the recent data shows that Indian economy grew at 13.5%. Okay, 13.5% is the growth that was achieved by India. At the same time, we can see that Indian dollar has depreciated against the dollar. At the same time, the Indian rupee has appreciated with respect to the other currencies. With respect to pound, with respect to yuan, with respect to yen, Indian rupee has appreciated, but against the dollar only, Indian rupee has depreciated. See, this depreciation that we are seeing, which is at all-time low, 81.56 rupees per dollar. The main reason for this is the US Federal Reserve increasing the interest rate, and not Indian economy slowing down its GDP growth. So this is a best sign, and as and when the inflation in the US is stabilized, as and when the growth kicks in US, as and when the Federal Reserve starts reducing the interest rate, automatically Indian rupee would get stabilized. Okay, what is the way forward? Rupee might strengthen to 70 to a dollar by 2030. It's a projection. It is very, very much possible. And the oil invoicing in rupee, this is something that India has to look for in the near future. If you have liked the video, please subscribe and share it with your friends for more such enriching content. Have a nice day. Thank you.